What are you afraid of?
The answer is well known. Snakes. And that was my biggest fear.
That's reasonable. Me? I'm afraid of hypocrites, of liars, of racism, of misogyny.
That's really deep, but I'm still scared of snakes.
I also don't like snakes.
I was with a group once, and I was like, my biggest fear is like dying alone, or it's like I'm afraid of being forgotten, and everyone's getting really deep, and I'm just like, I'm afraid of snakes, like dead ass. Like I'm terrified, guys. And they're like, John, we're being serious. I'm being dead serious, dude. You don't know how scared of snakes I am.
You know, people want to jump into these, like, what's the most extreme, like, oh my god, I'm gonna die, or, you know, and it's like,
Dude, fucking snakes.
you know,
man.
we can have stupid fears, like, all right.
Welcome to the podcast, everybody. This is Adventure Twins. We're two twins who talk about one of our favorite shows, Adventure Time. I'm John.
Whoa, I'm going second this time. That means I'm Jacob.
Whoa!
Today's episode, we're talking about Season 1, Episode 16, Ocean of Fear. In this episode, which was released, I'm getting all out of order here. This episode was released on June 21st, 2010. Written by J.G. Quintel and Cole Sanchez. In this episode, Finn tries to overcome his fear of the ocean. Here's a little thing, if you caught that writer, J.G. Quintel. That sound familiar?
I was thinking, I'm like, they're definitely new to this show. They haven't written an episode yet, have they?
Yeah, co-creator of a regular show.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Also, like, the voice of Mordecai, I believe. So.
Oh.
Yeah, he worked on Adventure Time. So, if any of this episode feels like a little different, it's a...
This one does feel a little different.
Yeah, same guy who made him and Cole Sanchez, who was also just a writer on Adventure Time, but worked on some other stuff.
Interesting. Did they also work on Flapjack?
Maybe, probably. I don't know.
Probably. Everyone worked on Flapjack.
It all comes back to Flapjack.
Yep.
So, first impressions, what do you think of this episode?
I think this is a classic episode.
Mm-hmm.
I remember this one fondly. I remember this one being on a lot. They really liked to rerun this episode, so I've seen this one. I probably got bored of it at a certain point because it was on so frequently. But it's still a classic episode. I like this one.
I also really like this one. I think it's a solid kind of exploring Finn more as a character, developing him. And for the kind of target audience of this show, I mean, it's a pretty solid, relatable thing. It's about overcoming a fear. And not having to come to terms with these things if, you're afraid of something.
His fear, I started describing it as, like, irrational, but he's afraid of the ocean is what he's afraid of. And I don't even think that's an irrational thing to be afraid of. And so that's something that could take a long time to get over because the ocean is large and vast, and it's not irrational to be afraid of all of that, of the unknown that's out there.
Yeah, it's a more common if you're talking like phobias, like fear of the ocean. What's that one called actually? Fear of the ocean.
I think it's called Ocean of Fear.
Thalassophobia.
Oh, tip of my tongue.
Yeah, specific phobia of oceans, persistent and intense fear of deep bodies of water such as the oceans, seas, or lakes. Thalassophobia. Where does that come from? Greek, thalassa means sea, and phobos means fear. I guess that should not be confused with aquaphobia, which is the fear of water.
That'd be tough.
Not to be confused with hydrophobia. Which is like soap because the water or like oil because water runs off of it. It doesn't absorb water. Okay. It's hydrophobic. So,
well,
anyway,
chemistry talk.
Mm-hmm.
So, the episode starts as all of the episodes do. Finn and Jake are running or walking. In this instance, they are chasing after a large newt wearing boots. And they're chasing it onto a beach. And they're trying to poot on the newt for stealing the boots, because that's what happens. And that's the punishment for when a newt steals boots, is you have
poot
to
on
poot
it.
on them. A lot of fart jokes in these past few episodes.
Yeah,
Really
specifically
fart-heavy.
pooting.
Yeah,
I don't
a lot
want
of
to.
pooting.
I don't want to actually on this one. This one starts different from every other episode because after the title screen, it then has like a title card with text,
Yes.
and it's a quote about like the nature of fear that's attributed to Pat McHale, who I did have to Google. It's a staff writer.
Okay.
That's all he is. It's this like deep quote about like what fear is and whatever. And I'm like, who the hell is Pat McHale? I'm like, name sounds really familiar. He is a staff writer on the show. That's all he is.
Naturally.
But anyway, yeah, I like that the newt is a boot thief because Jake stole boots at the City of Thieves.
Yeah, maybe the newt originates from the City of Thieves. And
You gotta
maybe that's
poot
where
on
he
that.
stole his boots.
You gotta poot on that newt because it's stealing your boots. Poot
what
newt,
you do.
boot suit, loot suit,
and it
goot.
and it rhymes, so it must make sense. And
Yeah,
it
that
must
is
be
true. If it rhymes, it's true.
Yep. And
I can't think of a
whoever
rhyme
said the
for
rhyme
true.
committed the crime.
You know, you admitted it, committed it.
Yep. Smelt it, dealt it.
Whoever said the rhyme committed the crime. You already say that one?
Helter skelter.
In a summer swelter.
Buckle, buckle.
Bombs something in a fallout shelter.
So the newt goes into the ocean, and we realize, or Finn realizes rather, that he can't go after it because he is terrified of the ocean. He, I guess, has never seen it before, according to maybe his memory, but
I really like how this fear is kind of depicted, where every time Finn tries to run up towards the ocean, there is a deep-pitched drone, which is exactly as it says in the subtitles, and it like kind of creates this sort of tunnel vision kind of dark ring effect around the screen, and all the water turns red and like the sky turns red and it throws red over the whole screen. And I really like how they depict this. It's a very anxious kind of feeling. They do a really good job kind of doing it in a way that's not like horrific for children, but depicting like this is scary for him.
yeah, for us it's like light and cheery and colorful and blue, and for him it's like honed in and focused on the scary.
I mean, you know, it's a big ocean of blood and waves of blood and stuff. And I mean, it's hard not to see, like, or to interpret it that way. So that'd be pretty spooky. River of blood, oh boy.
Ooh, yeah. So I kind of question, do they, like, keep up with the fact that Finn is afraid of oceans? I think because, I mean, he, like, kind of overcomes it, I think. I mean, that's the whole point of the episode. But, like, do they ever acknowledge that again, that he doesn't like the ocean?
I feel like they probably do. I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm thinking maybe it gets referenced once or twice. I don't remember, though.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. There's a lot of episodes. I don't know.
Do you know why he's afraid of the ocean? That's for a future episode.
It's probably one of those deep lore things that I don't remember.
It's not even deep lore. It's it's definitely lore, but it's like spoiler lore, so I'm not going to go there.
Okay, yeah, I don't remember that one.
Yeah, that was pretty good. We'll
I have a
revisit
half
that one
memory,
later.
of what that is.
Yeah.
I like that when Jake goes onto the newt in the ocean to try and fart on it, he like expands his butt flaps to basically hold on to the newt with like a grip so they can keep pooting on it more. I think that's very effective.
At this point, I started questioning, because I started thinking of like, wow, his fear is irrational. I know we talked about that in the prologue. I don't know how you describe the little banter we do before the theme song.
I'd call it a cold open.
Yeah, the cold open, yeah. So we talked about irrational fears, and one of the things I started thinking of, like, did we have irrational fears as a kid? And that made me think of how we used to be afraid of cats and dogs.
Oh,
and we were afraid of, like, an old wiener dog, if you remember that. Or maybe it's a beagle, maybe? I don't know. It's a very hyperactive
It was like a
dog
cocker
that scared
spaniel.
us.
It was like a really
Was it?
energetic
Yeah.
cocker, I think.
It was very, very energetic, and that scared us as kids.
Well, I remember we called them people in costumes.
Yep.
Basically, think
meant
mascot costumes. So like Chuck E. Cheese or
large heads.
The large heads that don't fucking Mickey Mouse type stuff. And we were terrified of these. I
We
looked
would
that one
scream
up.
and cry and cower from those.
So something like Anthrocon would have scared the shit out of us.
Yeah.
Anthrocon
And now look at
is,
you.
yeah,
You live
the
in the
big
city
furry
of furries.
convention. I live in
Yeah.
the biggest furry city in the world, so well, at least in the U.S. What I specifically remember as we started to overcome that fear was being at the zoo and there was some event going on or whatever, and so there were like people in costumes, as we called them, and there was a dude in like a manatee costume.
I remember I was very brave when we went to the manatee.
Yeah, and we were so like we wanted to see the manatee because manatees were one of our favorite animals, and we decided we wanted to go hug the manatee more than we wanted to be afraid of it, and so that's one of the things that kind of led to us overcoming that fear. Was we
I don't
really
remember.
wanted to see the manatee.
I remember the manatee, and I remember thinking as that was a big deal for me. That I remember getting a sticker from it, and I was like really brave because I got a sticker from the manatee. And to this point, that is still my proudest moment of my life.
I think about that a lot, about overcoming my fears.
Yep. Yeah. If
So,
we did it.
unfortunately, our fears weren't manifested as a gaseous cloud on our belly buttons, voiced by...
I wrote this down because I didn't know, but I figured you did.
It was Mark Hamill.
That's right. I knew it was someone big.
Yeah, that's Mark Hamill. Luke Skywalker is the voice of the fear in...
And also the Joker. He's the Jonkler.
Oh, that's right. He's
like
also
the best-
Skips in regular show.
He is also
Another
Skips.
reference to that. So,
Yep.
yeah. Anyway, it's Mark Hamill.
Yes, that's right. I forgot that.
Yeah.
Do you notice that fear is manifested as like a gaseous cloud, like Jacob said? He kind of has a Vincent Price mustache. I don't know if you noticed that.
I did notice that he has a mustache.
I like that.
And I'm
That
like,
was
that
cool.
is
And,
scary.
you know,
It's very scary.
King of horror, Vincent Price. It's fitting.
Yeah, very
Fear,
very spooky.
horror. You know.
So Finn realizes he's afraid, and he's I'm gonna have to overcome this fear. So he asks Jake for help, and so Jake is like, no, I don't really want to.
Jake comes back to Finn. And he starts bragging about how he's pooting on the newt, and he goes, "Finn, did you see me? I was like womp," and then I was like, "Take this, womp womp," and he just makes these fart sounds.
Okay, I was wondering what the womp was. I just wrote down on my note womp womp womp, and I'm like, I know that was something I think Jake said,
Yeah.
but I couldn't remember why.
That was Jake. Yeah, that was Jake impersonating how his poot sounded. Womp.
So Jake decides he's going to basically help out Finn overcome with exposure therapy, which is a tested way of... when I took Intro to Psychology in college, it was my first college class I ever took. Everyone took psych. What?
I wrote the exact same thing. When I took Gen Psych in college, we learned about exposure therapy.
Yeah, when I took, when I had to meet my gen ed requirements, so I took a 400-person lecture. Met 3 times a week for 50 minutes. You wrote down notes from a PowerPoint. You took a Scantron exam, and that was the whole class.
Yeah, that's learning right there.
It's Psych 10. I mean, this is intro level stuff. But anyway, we were talking about like different forms of like therapy or something, and this was one of the classes led by one of the TAs, and this TA definitely had an interest in psychology. One of the most boring human beings I think I've ever met in my entire life. Well, I didn't meet him. He was a TA in a 400-person lecture. But he was giving examples of these different types of therapy. And he was explaining exposure therapy and how it can help with like overcoming fears. And he specifically used an episode of Frasier as his example. Because I guess there's an episode of Frasier where Frasier has a client who's like afraid of clowns. So he starts him off small with like, oh, it's a Jack in the Box. But by the end of the episode, Frasier comes into the room dressed like a clown or whatever. And the TA kept taking like little side notes to be like, it's a very funny episode. I highly recommend it. And I'm like, you are the kind of person. It was like, you are the kind of person who'd watch Frasier.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's a reminder. Exposure therapy does, it's proven to help in certain scenarios. So, I mean, it's a valid attempt at trying to overcome a fear. Is very slowly getting into it. So,
in my class, she used a great example of like if you're afraid of flying, maybe the first step is just like putting a foot on a plane or seeing the plane or being in an airport, and then it can go all the way to actually flying. But sometimes you can just skip all that initial stuff and just full throttle throw you into it. Which is another way, almost like trial by fire. Best way to get over it is just full exposure.
It's like that one I said
it's each their own in a way.
Yeah, the big getting thrown in, I wrote it down as like that's getting when you're like being taught how to swim. Some parents their method is throw the kid in the pool and you just learn.
Yeah,
I don't think that's a great way to teach someone to swim.
That's a really bad idea. I agree.
I would not just throw someone who doesn't know how to swim into the water. But that is kind of it's going right into the deep end is kind of an apt metaphor there. Nevertheless.
That reminds me of us trying to learn how to ride bikes without training wheels.
Yeah.
And we were being taught at the same time. So mom would like push us off and then go do it with the other person. And immediately we would fall over and start crying. And so it was her like going back and forth to lift up a crying kid back on a bike just to push us so we'd fall over again and start crying again.
But you never forget.
Moments you never forget. Classic. Don't let go. Don't let go. You're doing it. No, we just fell over and cried a lot. That was riding a bike.
Yeah. It's like they say, you never forget how to ride a bike and you never forgive the person who taught you. So anyway, yeah, they're coming up with ideas, because Finn turns out is even more scared than Jake realized, and even very minor, just putting your feet in first isn't working for him.
It doesn't work at all. Finn starts standing on Jake, beating the shit out of him.
Shit out of Jake.
Kicking him, punching him, he will not go back in the water.
Yeah, this is a moment that I've seen, GIFs, however you want to pronounce it. And I've seen clips of like Adventure Time out of context is a wave with one single drop of water splashing up, and in slow motion you get this like grotesque looking facial expression and you see it start to develop on Finn's face. That moment's all over the internet as like a him being afraid of a single drop of water and then freaking out and beating up Jake again.
Very flapjack coated and how like super detailed his face gets. Yeah, you see that one online all the time. I was going to say, really from this point on, it's just, there's not a ton of plot to this episode other than Jake is trying to help Finn get over his fear.
Yeah, and Jake...
It's very simple. It's not like last episode, which was like literally all over the place. This one's pretty straightforward, the whole episode.
Yeah, Jake realizes that very small increments aren't going to help Finn, so his next plan was... apparently while they were sleeping, rebuilds their house in the middle of the ocean so that when Finn wakes up, he drops all the walls and turns out they're in the middle of the ocean. So that he wakes up in his bed and it's just in the ocean. And so Finn is freaking out again and Jake's trying to help him and like one step at a time suddenly takes his bed away and so now he's just floating in the water. And I really like this bit because... you can see Finn's face as he's trying to like keep his head above water and not freak out, and it's like all bloated and red. You can see veins on his eyeballs as they're like bulging from his head, and he's trying not to freak out.
He looks frog-eyed, and you can see how much he's probably straining his neck to go like... And I'm like, that's literally me when I try to float. Because everyone's like, oh, you can float, just do this. No, some people are natural sinkers, and that's me. Yeah. I can't float in the water. And so that's how I look when I'm trying to swim. And that hurts because I was a lifeguard for 4 years.
Yeah. In the next step, after just putting him in the water, I wrote this quote down. I'm going to push you underwater with my jowls. And so
I like that part.
Jake... stretches his jowls to basically push Finn underwater and more or less drown him. It's, there really is not a whole lot to this episode. Finn just keeps being scared.
Yeah. And so naturally Finn beats up Jake again. And that reminded me of actually lifeguard training when we were learning training on how to deal with people you might be saving who are like responding violently to being saved. Because, like, when people are potentially drowning, they flail around a lot, and they might do literally anything they can to keep themselves afloat, including trying to climb on top of the lifeguard to drown them. And so we had to do training on how do you handle that. Normally, you just kind of, like, shove them off and like duck your head underwater to like escape them and then go back in for the save. But I remember practicing that in lifeguard, and we had one guy named Colin, really tall guy, paired up with Pastor Jen, who was like 4'11", like very small, and we're doing the practice like shove. And I remember looking over, and Colin full on lifts Jen out of the water above his head and chucks her across the swimming pool. And I'm just like, at what point is that necessary? You just like body slam Jen.
Yeah.
So that memory, anytime I think of lifeguard training, that's one of my favorite memories is fighting Pastor Jen off. Like,
I was not a lifeguard. I completed the online training portion, and we actually arrived at camp, and we were about to start lifeguard training, and they just kind of asked me, Jacob, do you even want to be a lifeguard? You'll probably never end up doing it, because my job was media. I carried around a camera all summer. I was never going to be a lifeguard. And I just go, no, I don't really want to do this. And so I basically did the online training. So if you were drowning digitally, I could save you. But I could not save you in the actual water.
Maybe if you go on a fishing trip, maybe you could save them. That's fishing with the PH.
Yeah, PH fishing. Yeah, I can tell you all about like cyber scams. Anyway,
Finn manages to take Jake's ears and like use them as a sail to glide over to like some rubble that's in the middle of the ocean. So he's on solid ground again, and so he's safe for the time being.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. What happens? Oh my god, yeah.
They get like a submarine, I think.
Yeah, Finn keeps agreeing. I was like, no, I want you to help me. I want you to help me, even though he keeps beating the shit out of Jake.
Yeah.
Jake keeps going like, this is my bread and butter. You can't mess with my bread and butter. And he's like, you're beating the shit out of me. And so Jake is like, look, you have to agree. You're not going to mess with my bread and butter, but also you have to speak in rhyme, which I like because they do speak in rhyme for the rest of the episode. Like very forced rhymes.
It works though. They actually consistently speak in the rhymes.
And yeah, they go into a little submarine and go down into a dark abyss in the ocean, which scares the shit out of Jake even more.
Yeah. My favorite part of this is they're about to go into this abyss, and Finn starts freaking out because he's kind of cool seeing the ocean from down there. And
it's like this cool underwater city. And there's like cars and stuff.
Pretty. He's calmed down a bit. He's like, wow, this is actually really cool. And then Jake starts to go into this deep, dark abyss. And so Finn starts freaking out and shouting out, turn around, turn around. And Jake goes, hey, saying turn around twice doesn't count as a rhyme.
I did like that part. That was good.
Which is a great line. And that made me think of when Black Sabbath rhymed the word masses with masses.
Yeah, War Pigs, the song just fucks so hard. You don't even care. It's the first line in the song.
Generals gather in their masses.
Just like witches at
black masses.
Rhymed masses with masses.
Different meaning of the word masses, but like the song's so cool that you don't even notice that the rhyme.
It doesn't even bother. Like it's not even a problem.
Matter.
I liked the cool underwater city, and it kind of suggested like that it had been all flooded or something. It was leaning into the whole like, is a post-apocalyptic Earth, and it's just like one more moment of like, was this a flooded city and stuff?
It's giving apocalypse vibes because almost everything the show does, aside from the fantasy stuff, once you start to see like rubble and stuff, they really build that up. Very Fallout vibes.
This whole thing, because they get back up there and Finn realizes that he will never be able to go back down. He keeps talking with the fear inside of him, voiced by Mark Hamill. And Finn realizes he will never be able to overcome his fear and go save Jake. So the only way to do that, because Jake gets like knocked out because Finn freaked out in the bottom of the abyss. And so Finn realizes if he just knocks himself out, that's the only way he's ever going to be able to get back down to the ocean. So he hits himself on the head with a wrench, makes a little squeak sound, and he floats back down. And basically, if I knock myself out, I don't have to experience going down to the bottom of the ocean. And the whole sequence of like going into the abyss and seeing the underwater city reminds me of the game Subnautica. If you've played that one or are familiar with it,
no.
That game has definitely made me hate the ocean, or at least going underwater, because it's a resource management based survival game. And to progress further in the game, you have to keep going deeper and deeper and further away from safety. And it can be a very anxiety-inducing game.
Sure.
Anyway,
Reminds me of
I thought about
Bioshock.
that one a lot. Of what? Of
Bioshock.
Oh, yeah, that's true, too.
Yeah.
That's just Ayn Rand.
Yeah. Yeah. So they make it down to the bottom of the ocean floor where Finn finds Jake. And I've always liked the ocean floor in this. It looks very comfortable, like a nice shaggy carpet. And I've really always liked the ocean floor in this episode.
Yeah, so, I mean...
He rescues Jake.
and
They go back to the ocean. Or the shore.
Yeah, and it turns out there's a bunch of other fart people, like, inside Finn's gut.
Gaseous bubbles?
Yeah, they're like gaseous clouds, and they tell Finn, no, you're not a wuss, you're not a bad hero because you're afraid of something. And they say, the mark of a great hero is his flaw, which I think is a good line.
It's a good lesson.
And also there's this whole, like, kingdom of fart clouds inside that have their own rules and ideologies on heroism.
I wrote down on my notes, what the fuck are all these things in Finn's belly button? Like, what are these things? They have, like, their own society.
Yeah. And it just kind of ends there. I mean, are we missing anything?
Pretty much. They end with another title card from that show writer.
Oh, yeah,
about,
it's
like,
another line
fear
about, From
yeah,
Pat
I mean,
McHale.
overall, like, not a ton happens in the episode. There's just a bunch of funny bits, which are kind of, like, I think the best episodes are the ones that just have funny moments.
Yeah. Yeah, real Family Guy funny moment energy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how we've managed to talk about this one for this long because, like, so little happens in this episode. But, I mean, it's a good one.
It's funny we mentioned Jen's Psych, because speaking of Psych, today, as we record on May 6th, Sigmund Freud's birthday.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's on my little Google notification on my Windows.
All right. I wonder what
There you
Freud would
go.
have said about fear. Probably said you're afraid of
Your mother.
your mother, but also your father. That's why you want to kill him.
Oh, of course, naturally.
Yeah, I don't know. Freud just did a bunch of coke, and at this point in modern psychology, you don't even have to. You basically have to know that, like, analytic psychology, you have to acknowledge that he created it, but most of his other theories, you just don't acknowledge those. You just say, no, that's pretty much not where the current ideas are. You just acknowledge him as a historical psychologist, and that is the extent of Freud. He comes up a lot in media scholarship, though. He is, Freudism is a big one in, like, media studies. Anyway, yeah.
My gen psych professor mentioned that she acknowledged that, like, yeah, like, we know him for this, but, like, other than that, nobody takes him seriously at this point. But she goes, yeah, I think, like, maybe her professor or, like, her, I don't know, someone she worked closely with, maybe a coworker, was, like, live and die, still a big Freudian.
Oh, shit.
And she goes, yeah, it's really hard. And I go, yeah, no shit.
Yeah, it's just all controlled by that superego, man.
Yeah.
Ego comes up a lot in crosswords.
Oh, really?
It's a popular one, yeah. Two
It's an
vowels.
easy one,
yeah.
It's like you, like was a baby goat.
Oh,
you.
yeah. Yeah, there's a few
Yeah, I
words
get that one a lot.
The word erect comes up a lot, I've noticed. There's certain words that I'm noticing a lot. Asp, the Egyptian snake. Yep, that one's a big one. That's like a fan favorite for crossword solvers. Are we missing anything? I mean,
I don't think so. We talked a lot about things that we're afraid of, and I'm afraid of you all not reaching out to us and connecting with us on our social media.
Yeah, so if you listened all the way to this point in the podcast, let us know on our social media, Adventure Twins Pod on Instagram, or send us an email at adventuretwinspod@gmail.com. You can also just comment directly on Spotify. I see we have people doing that. Thanks, Zach.
Thanks, Zach. Or on YouTube.
Yeah, let us know, what are you afraid of? How have you overcome that fear, or what steps have you made to overcome that fear? So,
Were you too afraid of people in costumes as Jacob and I were?
did you have a different name for
fear?
them? I've Googled it, and I feel
don't think so.
It's not. It's pretty regular.
No.
A lot of little kids are scared of it. I mean, whatever.
I think we just Chuck E. Cheese.
We just took a little bit longer maybe to get over it.
Maybe
so. Whatever. We got over it eventually.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah. Anyway.
Grimace standing right behind you.
Oh, fuck, it's Grimace! Actually, no. If Grimace were right behind me, I mean, there's also a bed right behind me. I know where I'd take Grimace. Straight to bed.
Give him a little kiss, a little Grimace kiss.
Well, I'd give him a little Grimace kiss. That's for you, Grimace. All right.
This took a turn.
All right. Yeah, let us know on social media. What are you afraid of? What are your thoughts on Grimace? I'd give him a little kiss. How about you? Adventure Twins.